Welcome to Evilive, a live media commentary show that answers the question, how did they get the afterlife so accurately? Subscribe if you're new to the channel, because today we are reviewing Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. I don't even mind saying it a third time. Beetlejuice. What? What are you going to do? All right. Directed by Tim Burton. Screenplay by Alfred Gough and Miles Millar. Story by Alfred Gough, Miles Millar, and Seth Grahame-Smith. Don't know what that means. Cinematography is by Harris Zambarlukos. I hope I pronounced that right, and I'm sure I didn't. But you know what? I wanted to call him out because I think he did a good job with the cinematography. It felt like the original Beetlejuice visually. And that goes down to a bunch of stuff. I mean, it has to start with the leadership of Tim Burton more than anything else. But then you got to give props to the other people that had a hand in it, because they really stuck true to the entire imagery, including at times the bad CGI with the sandworms in the Netherworld area. There was a point where Jenna Ortega's character and Winona Ryder's character are like running away from sandworms, and you're just like, yeah, that's as bad as I remember it. with Gina Davis and whatever the hell his name was. I can't remember now for some reason. Music by Danny Elfman, which was surprising. It didn't feel as Elfman as I expected. You can boil down the original soundtrack of the original Beetlejuice to Harry Belafonte and Danny Elfman. This one, however, it was almost like someone else scored the whole picture with inspiration from Danny Elfman and like some random songs, like some wildly random songs. Like there was Soul Train in it a couple of times and some other songs that you're just like, wait, what? Why is this here? Like what? Something that really drove the original Beetlejuice so wonderfully was its simplistic, isolated, at times claustrophobic story with a very fun score. And the wildness of the characters made it something you didn't want to turn away from. And the sort of outlandish, otherworldly sense that Tim Burton brought to the visuals made you just keep watching and hyper focus in on what it was all about. And I don't know if it's oversaturation of Tim Burton, not recently, but just his whole span of work. You know, from the Halloween Christmas show that he did, Nightmare Before Christmas, and Corpse Bride, and every single stop motion animation thing he ever had his fingers dipped into. We've had so much of it since Beetlejuice that it no longer has the allure that Beetlejuice had. That freshness. And you know, we've moved forward in filmmaking and I don't think Tim Burton has. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's certainly a dated thing. And this feels like it is a modern film that's dated. How the hell do you get that? You hire Tim Burton. I wouldn't want anyone else directing this film. So I want to make sure that's clear. I'm glad that Tim Burton came back to do it. I'm glad that, you know, the people who came back for this film did, because it felt like a sequel to Beetlejuice, which is the point. But there was something absent, noticeably absent. And it really was in the first half of the film that you were sort of like, oh, is this going to not really land? Like, because the jokes aren't really landing. It feels a little bit hollow. Anyway, I'm going to get into spoilers. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers or plot details about this, get out. Go watch the film, come back, and enjoy this. Because I am going to get into plot details that are germane to the story. Anyway, this had a budget of $100 million, which nowadays is not a lot. I mean, it's significant, but it's not like, you know, for a big studio project, it's not a lot. And it's going to make its money back in this first opening weekend. 100%. It will make its money back. Just on premise alone, another Beetlejuice film. Michael Keaton will bring people. Winona Ryder will bring people. Catherine O'Hara will bring people to the theater. And as well they should, because they all were stellar in this, even if I didn't particularly think the writing was always there on point. And I didn't particularly think the script was there on all points. But I, like halfway through and throughout the end of it, I finally clued in. And I don't know if it was me going back to my childhood self of rewatching Beetlejuice, the original, again, and really just connecting, or if it was just me accepting, like, okay, well, they're not going to try to progress anything. They're just going for silliness again. I'm here for silliness. I like silliness. You know what I mean? I think, especially as an audience, a modern film going audience, because it's so expensive to go see films in a theater, because the post-COVID universe for theaters has not recovered and will never recover, because home cinemas are so immersive, and you can pause it whenever you want. You can go drop a deuce whenever you want. You can go get your food that doesn't cost a goddamn arm and a leg whenever you want. People are very, very specific about what they're willing to go to a theater to see, and I'm hoping people go to see this in the theater, but it doesn't feel like a film made for a theater. I was going to go see this in IMAX early in the afternoon, and extenuating circumstances aside, I couldn't, and so I had to go back and see a smaller screening of it later in the day. And I'm glad I didn't pay IMAX price because this is not an IMAX movie. Like, there's nothing about this movie that's IMAX. Like, not a drop of it. There was even, like, the theater I was in had, like, vibrating seats, you know, they like immersive stuff. I was feeling that, but it wasn't really warranted. You don't need that for this film. In fact, I could have just not went to the theater and enjoyed it as much as I did in the theater. That's the type of film this is. And I'm not saying that to push anyone out of buying tickets. I hope you do, because that's going to mean that it succeeds even more. And it should, because it's fun. It's goofy. But you have to go in knowing that. Don't go in thinking it's going to be a cinematic triumph, that it's going to push a genre or push a storytelling boundary, because it's not. And in fact, it actually kind of does the opposite. It kind of drags it down a little bit with unnecessary story beats. But I don't know if I'm okay with it because I wanted to see Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice again. I don't know if I'm okay with it because I wanted to see Winona Ryder as Lydia Dietz again, or Catherine O'Hara as Delia again. If it's nostalgia driving my desire for this to be better than it was. In any case, we'll get to it. All right. Here's the log line. After a family tragedy, 3 generations of Dietz family returns home to Winter River. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia's life is turned upside down when her daughter, teenage daughter Astrid, who does not sell the teenage aspect at all. She's a grown-ass woman, Jenna Ortega. She's not a teen. We cannot go back to 90210 days when they're like, yeah, these are clearly like mid-20s actors, but they're in high school. We can't do that anymore. It's just too obvious. And we have good actors nowadays. Like, kid actors are not the kid actors from the 80s and 70s. So let's throw them a bone here. In any case, I thought Jenna Ortega did a wonderful job for what she was given. I'm going to talk myself out of liking this more than I actually liked it coming out of the theater, because I did actually like it. But there is this hovering weight of, yeah, but why? Why did you like that? Because the original Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice was him ad-libbing almost every single line. If he was ad-libbing every single line in this, it tells me that Michael Keaton is not the same Michael Keaton. And so I'm hoping he didn't, because not everything landed the way it did. There were times when I was laughing out loud because it was genuinely funny and bombastic, but it was not throughout the whole film. All right, so the story is this. This is the spoiler part. Again, this is your last warning. You don't want spoilers? Turn this off. So this is the spoiler part of this review. The story is that Lydia Dietz, Winona Ryder's character, is divorced. She has a child that's in college, I guess. It looks like a college. It doesn't look like a high school, but if she's a teenager, then she should be in high school, but it doesn't feel like a high school. There's a dorm room, so it has to be a college. So Lydia's daughter is in a dorm room and in a college. She doesn't want anything to do with her mom because her mom is, as she sees it, exploiting this whole bullshit story about an afterlife. She doesn't believe in Astrid Dietz doesn't believe in ghosts or anything like that, like her mom Lydia does. And so Lydia is sort of being led around by this dude named Rory, played by Justin Theroux, who is exploiting her in order to make money off this whole like ghost thing. And so they do like, like all of those haunted house movies where they, or series where they go to a new home that's supposedly haunted, and then they bring the people on and tell them what was haunted about it. Well, we're sort of introduced in the middle of one of those scenes with Lydia, and she sees Beetlejuice in the theater. And it sort of comes to reveal that Beetlejuice has been somehow inadvertently, not intentionally, but inadvertently haunting her because of her traumatic experiences as a child. The original ghosts from the original Beetlejuice have moved on in their afterlife. They found a loophole, as is explained. What that means, I don't fucking know, but they're not in it. I would have loved to see Gina Davis again, and I don't know why I can't think of the actor's name. I love him as an actor, but for some reason I can't think of his damn name. I would have loved to see him as well. They're alive. They're acting still, so I don't know why they didn't bring him back. But in any case, they're gone. So it's really just Lydia sort of doing this whole ghost host medium type show with her romantic other Rory sort of like pushing her along, trying to make as much money as he possibly can off of her. And then you have that sort of estranged relationship between Astrid and Lydia, her daughter. And Delia is like, we open up with Delia constantly texting Lydia saying, hey, you need to contact me. Hurry up. Your father's dead. So you'll remember that Delia is the stepmother, not the actual mother. And her father is unfortunately passed, Charles. And Charles is sort of the rock of the family. He's the thing that kept it together. The reason for his death was that he went on a bird watching expedition, the plane crashed, and he was bitten in half by a shark. I'm not kidding. And so the entire film, where he is still featured in it, he is half of a body with a bite mark cut out of it, and he's speaking through a spurting blood like trachea, I guess. None of it makes sense, but why should it? So we get Lydia going to meet Delia, and Delia is just like doing this art, she's still doing her art stuff, but it's like performance art in like a big city or something. And she's like, he died, he's dead, we got to have a funeral for him. And so they go back to the old town, and they have a Winter's River, and they have this funeral where the people sing Deo, a sort of chorus version of Deo, which is weird, which doesn't make any sense why that would be the song they play. I get that you're doing a callback to the original film, but it's not like that was like a meaningful, lifelong connective song for Charles. At least I wouldn't have believed that. It's very clear it's just a callback. And so they have the wake, and then Rory, in an effort to make even more money, decides it's an opportune time to, and Justin Theroux plays him so awkward and uncomfortable, and I love every minute of him on screen, even though I hate him. We're supposed to. So he proposes to Lydia, and no one wants him. No one wants Lydia to marry him. Lydia doesn't even want to marry him. But she's sort of being taken advantage of, and she's kind of letting it happen because she's still in this period of trauma and codependency. And so she doesn't say no, but she doesn't say yes, and they just sort of take it as yes. So it's almost like she's some weird hostage in the situation. They're like, yeah, we're going to get married on Halloween, which is 2 days away. Cut to Astrid, Lydia's daughter, riding off on Lydia's bike from her childhood and going into town. And then we see Winter River. And I and my wife fell in love with Winter River. This town is beautiful. I'm sure it's a amalgamation of a bunch of different shooting locations, but goddamn if it doesn't look beautiful. Like, I want to go to live there 100%. No joke. Just because it's a quiet old town. Like, I grew up in Salem, Utah, which is a tiny, tiny little religious community. Fuck the religion, but I loved the sort of well, it's sort of what Stephen King always writes about. That little town in Maine. That's the vibe that I grew up in, like, for real. So I always kind of love that idea, and that's what Winter River is. So she's running through town, and she almost gets hit by a bunch of cars and crashes into a tree. She looks up, and she sees this guy looking down at her. And again, this is a huge spoiler moment, but you've had 2 warnings now, so I'm not going to fucking warn you again. He's a ghost. She doesn't know he's a ghost because she doesn't believe in ghosts. And so she immediately just becomes infatuated with him as this handsome young man. And they sort of like strike up a conversation, and she's like into him, and he like invites her back to the house to hand out Halloween candy on Halloween before the mother's wedding. And so she says, yeah, she definitely wants to do that. His whole deal is he murdered his parents, and they're down, we see them briefly because we don't see their faces because he clearly like murdered them. And so he basically like just shuffles her up to his room, because when you're dead in this universe, you can't really leave your house until you pass on to the whatever the full afterlife is. They never really explain it. So he's still stuck in this house. Anyway, she goes back, says she wants to go on this date with him, and we cut through. So there's 3 storylines going in this film. If you reflect back on the original Beetlejuice film, there was 2 storylines. There was the Dietzes moving into the house, and then you had the people in the house trying to get them out. Those are the 2 storylines. The 3 storylines in this one are Astrid being convinced to give up her life essence by this ghost boy, and so Liddy has to save her from that. Beetlejuice being hunted by his ex-wife, and that's a storyline. And then Lydia trying to use Beetlejuice to save her daughter. So those are the 3 storylines that are concurrently running through all of this. And then everything else is sort of like rotating in shenanigans on the outside. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of shenanigans. I mean, we have fucking Danny DeVito in this, totally lost as a character because he's a janitor who gets screwed over by Monica Bellucci's character, Dolores, who is Beetlejuice's first wife. She is this witch who is aspiring in life. She was aspiring to immortality in this cult. She found Beetlejuice as a living man, and he was like a grave robber and stuff. And so she like poisoned him, but then he hacked her to bits before he died. And so that's how he became a demon ghost entity the first time. And she was chopped up in different boxes, which Danny DeVito's character inadvertently unleashed, and so she's come back for revenge to kill Beetlejuice. Very convoluted, very unnecessary. You could have cut her out of the film entirely, and it would not have changed one story beat at all. It would have changed the ending, but there's no reason that it needed to. It's just extraneous. You don't need that story beat. I don't even know where to go next. So Lydia is being taken advantage of by Rory, and she's trying her best to just be authentically who she is, connecting with her mother, Delia. Delia is dealing with the aftermath of her husband, Charles, dying. He was kind of her rock. And so they're selling off or boxing up all the possessions in the home at Winter River in order to, send it away or put it in storage or sell it or whatever to get rid of the house. And they're getting ready to sell the house and stuff. And that's how Lydia realizes that Astrid, who she dropped off at this house, well, that house is the scene of a murder where the boy that Astrid is going to see is the ghost, the guy who actually murdered his parents in that house. And so she goes to run to save Astrid. Astrid realizes that the whole promise is that Astrid's father, Lydia's ex-husband that had Astrid with Lydia, went on to save the rainforests, and he ended up getting killed there. So he's actively working in the afterlife. And so the murderer that Astrid falls in love with says, hey, I can take you. I need you to help me become real. And in return, I'll take you to see your father. He's actually just stealing her life force so that he can be alive and trap her in the afterlife. But she doesn't know that. And she willingly goes through with it because she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about because she doesn't believe in ghosts, really. And she's just now realizing that ghosts are real, but she really desperately wants to see her dad. Who wouldn't? And so she agrees to do whatever, and she goes into the afterlife, and he makes the trick with her, and she gets hauled off to the soul train to go into the future afterlife, like heaven or hell or whatever. And the soul train is literally 1970s Soul Train, like disco, dancing sequences, the song, everything. I had fun with it, but it's like wild and bombastic and out there pointless. So Lydia comes in to save her. She meets her ex-husband, the dead guy who's Astrid's dad, to save her. She makes a deal with Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice makes her sign a contract for marriage again because he wants to escape not only his ex-wife, but he wants to then escape the afterlife and become real. And so she signs it off knowing that Beetlejuice can help her. Delia ends up trying to commune with her husband at the graveyard, buys two asps, which are supposedly defanged. They're not defanged. They bite her. She dies. She goes to the afterlife. So everyone's in the afterlife. Even Rory goes. There's this really great sequence where Rory says Beetlejuice 3 times before all of these shenanigans start, and he's introduced to the afterlife. He thinks it's a vision because he's a fucking idiot. But Lydia doesn't try to convince him otherwise because she doesn't want him to know the insanity that he just sort of had. And Beetlejuice acts as this sort of like therapist of sorts, and he makes Lydia pregnant, and then a baby Beetlejuice spits out of her womb and starts crawling around, biting at her leg and freaking everyone out. And Rory passes out, and like Beetlejuice spills his guts. Literally, his guts spill out. I mean, all sorts of like weird, crazy, funny, ridiculous stuff. The baby is probably the best part of the entire film. Probably. Not even the musical sequences were really on par with the original musical sequence. And this sort of like insanity like that. Ultimately, of course, they save Astrid from the afterlife, a horrible death. Beetlejuice ends up condemning that boy to his death that was trying to trick Astrid. And then it gets to the wedding scene at the night where Rory is sort of like pushed aside and Beetlejuice steps in, and they have this big musical dance sequence, a la the dinner sequence, the Come Mr. Tallyman, Tally Me Banana thing. And it doesn't land as well. And that's when we finally get to see Dolores come in and confront Beetlejuice. And ultimately, Dolores and Rory are eaten by a sandworm. And there's this really interesting, and I thought it was really, really funny sequence where every time there was a flashback, or every time that Beetlejuice was breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience, he was doing it with this wild Spanish accent, as if it was a dubbed over film. It was very strange. I was there for it. I thought it was funny and strange and out there and wacky. But I really enjoyed it because I've always loved Michael Keaton. I can't not love the man. He's brilliant as an actor and a comedian, all the way back to Night Shift and Gung Ho and Mr. Mom. And I love everything he's done. And Batman, for fuck's sake. So they get eaten by the sandworm. Beetlejuice ends up being banished again because Jenna Ortega's character, Astrid, finds that he like sort of broke otherworldly laws, and so the contract that he had with Lydia is non-binding, and he sort of gets blown up literally as like this inflatable floating man and then exploded. And then they sort of go. And then there's this after sequence of Lydia stopping the haunting series that she was doing and going and seeing like Transylvania with her daughter. And then her daughter sees this guy acting like Dracula, and then they get married and have a baby, and the baby that gets shot out is the Beetlejuice baby. And then you sort of get this side view of a bed with Lydia laying in bed, and Beetlejuice like wakes up. He's like, "Whoa, that was a weird dream, huh?" And then she wakes up and freaks out because she doesn't want to be married to Beetlejuice, obviously. And then she wakes up and he's not next to her, and that's the end. Very strange, convoluted story for literally no reason. I didn't even talk about Willem Dafoe's character, who is this direct actor who plays a detective in life, but in death plays a detective, even though he's an actor. And he's trying to capture Dolores before she gets to Beetlejuice. You didn't need him in it at all either. First of all, I love Willem Dafoe, so I didn't mind that he was in it, but you don't need him. The whole Dolores storyline could have been pulled out and it would have been a better film for it. No reason for it at all. It was just saccharine, sickly, sweet frosting on this wedding cake that no one wanted to take a bite out of. I mean, that's the reality of it. So my initial thoughts are, I'm so glad they did this, and I desperately love these actors, and I love seeing them step back into this world. My favorite parts of the film were the humor. Like, Beetlejuice is fucking hilarious. Lydia is on the nose. Catherine goddamn O'Hara as Delia is always amazing, and they look amazing. These are grown-ass women my age or much older, and they look wonderful. So props to them, props to their nutritionists and the makeup artist, because fucking hell, Catherine O'Hara, I saw you in Schitt's Creek, and you looked horrible, and in this, you look stunning. So I don't know what you're doing, but keep it up. You're amazing. And I love her comedic chops. It didn't all land, but she swung, and I appreciate the swing. My favorite parts were Beetlejuice on camera. You know, he had as much, maybe a little bit more of a role than he did in the original Beetlejuice, which he didn't have a whole lot of screen time in. A little bit more in this one. But every time he was on screen, you couldn't pull your eyes away. He's great. And we saw a lot of shrunken heads. A lot of them. Which is kind of weird and strange. It's like Beetlejuice made his own little detective, like sort of like human exorcism business in the afterlife, and they all were working for him. And there's a sequence where they sort of like all run away and get into the real world and are like running around in the town, which is totally unnecessary, but I enjoyed watching it, so maybe it wasn't unnecessary. I don't know. Ultimately, I think in general, people expect too much out of films nowadays. I think we're expecting every film to be like, blow you away. It must be the most amazing thing in the fucking world to even be worth watching in the first fucking place. And that's just not reality. The reality is some films, they're good enough. This is better than good enough. And that's good enough for me. And for anyone who says that you shouldn't see this because maybe it didn't land as well as their memory of the first one, well, fuck you. That's not what film is supposed to do. It's not supposed to live up to your nostalgic memory. It's supposed to live up to what it's intended to be per the script. And I think this did, and more so, because of the actors involved, because of the director involved. It was better than it would have been just on the page. And that's good enough to go to a film, go to a theater and watch it. It's a good film. It's not a great film. And I enjoyed it thoroughly. So I didn't put in a rating, but I would totally give it 3 out of 5 Evil Eyes. It's not great. It's not a great film, but it's definitely worth watching. I might even go up to 4 if I was hard pressed to do so, because it's an enjoyable watch. And I highly suggest everyone, if you liked Beetlejuice, the original, you should go out and see Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. You will not be disappointed. You may be like, that wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but you're still gonna be like, I'm glad I saw it. It's fun. And what's wrong with laughing out loud in the theater and having a good goddamn time? I hate every reviewer ever who is like intent on, if it's not the most amazing thing, fuck you all. No, fuck you. You should not be reviewing films. Review them on their own merits, not on what you expect them or want them to be. If you really thought you knew so much about film, you should go make a film and then suffer the other critics shitting on your shit. Fuck reviewers, even this one, and go watch Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. I wouldn't mind being fucked. I like having sex. All right, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much. Have you seen Beetlejuice Beetlejuice? What did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. As always, remember the evil spelled backwards is live. So get your asses out there and be evil.